And then at that point, John Mater needs to be coming back for another year.
Agreed. We're going to discuss defensive coordinator candidates. I'm going to tell you why I'm kind of intrigued by the name that's being floated, maybe a little bit more so than you are. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay, the defensive coordinator search is still ongoing after Jim Knowles decides to go to Penn State. Where do you think Oklahoma goes from here?
There's a couple of options that's been floated around, but I'm going to be honest. I don't think Oklahoma does anything until after closer to the spring game. It feels like at this point, should we be in a rush? Is there really a reason to rush into getting a defensive coordinator? I mean, the rumors have been floating around Wes Goodwin coming over as like a analyst as he comes from Clemson, because Clemson let him go as defensive coordinator. Wes wasn't terrible at Clemson as DC, but he wasn't as good as he was when he was working with Brent Venables. Now he's available. Oklahoma can bring him in as an analyst, because then at that point, the buyout pricing that, Wes is getting from Clemson maintains, because he didn't quit. They fired him or relieved him of his duty. So they have to pay him his buyout, but a lot of those contracts, they encourage you to get a job. So him getting a job as an analyst is typically good enough. But you may want to find a linebacker coach. And I've been floating Brian Odom for a while. He's now an interim DC down in North Texas. He was at USC and in Oklahoma, and he did bring in a lot of linebackers here. I think he's one to consider, but there is one name that has been going around. The Oklahoma Breakdown was talking about it. What do you think about him, John?
So first, I think the Brian Odom idea is a good one. So even if I like where we're about to go, I think Brian Odom is a coach that's well worth bringing back as a linebacker coach. He is a good recruiter, a good developer. Now, Nate Dreiling, that's a name that's kind of been floating around. He's the defensive coordinator at Arkansas State, just recently hired by Butch Jones to be the defensive coordinator there. Was at Utah State, was the interim head coach there. Prior to that, though, he was at New Mexico State. Now, I get it. All these states, and not one of them being a Power 4 state school. I get where you're coming from. But who did New Mexico State beat in 2023 that creates some intrigue? That's the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, wasn't that the Diego Pavia-led Auburn Tigers?
That's the Diego Pavia-led New Mexico State team that beat Auburn.
Yeah.
And that New Mexico State defense held Auburn to how many points, Jay?
It was like 10 or something like that?
10 points. So this is a dude that's got some defensive coordinator chops, and I'm really, really intrigued by it. And I think that he could be a really good hire. Also, who else did he beat? Rich Rod and Jacksonville State. Held them to 17 points that season. Also had a good win over a good UTEP program. Beat Sam Houston, who's been a program on the rise. Beat FIU, held them to 17 points. The only significant losses they took were to Liberty, a Liberty team that was cooking back in 2023. So and with Caden Salter, who was really good. So the Nate Dreiling thing, this is really fascinating to me. And I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it too, because he's 34 years old and he's from Victoria, Kansas. So you got a guy that's from the area, from the Midwest region. He knows this area, played at Pittsburgh State, which didn't we just get a tight end from Pittsburgh State?
We did.
And Pittsburgh State's a powerhouse in the D2 market. Just understand that they're a powerhouse. They win a lot. And he played in the NFL, spent some time with the Packers, the Chiefs, and he played linebacker. So he's a linebacker that got a chance to play, played a year in the NFL, and he went into coaching. He was a grad assistant at Kansas. He was an analyst at Oregon. So he's been to a few places, but then he got an opportunity right into DC world at New Mexico State. That was his first job, and he, did pretty solid there. And then Utah State, he was the DC, and then he was the interim head coach. whenever, that coach there got fired. And then he got the DC spot there at Arkansas State like January 3rd. So if Oklahoma's thinking about going there and snatching him up from them, I mean, it's going to be something quick. It's kind of funny, though, at the same time.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. And it's just the way of the college football world. It kind of sucks. It sucks when it's you, but it's kind of the way it works. I think it's intriguing because it's another young, promising, up-and-coming, coordinator option, promising young assistant that is showing that he can have success, and he can have success against SEC teams because he did it against Auburn. And that game right there got a lot of those guys at Auburn, got them to Vanderbilt. I think everybody saw that, and it was a beatdown. It was like a 3-score win for New Mexico State. So it's a program that was able to do some things, but Nate Dreiling was a part of that. I mean, he was a huge part of that. He held Auburn to 10 points. Now, it may not be the Cam Newton Auburn Tigers, but if you're able to do that and go put on that kind of beatdown, you got some
on the road.
On the road in their place, you got some chops.
Look, we talk about losing to 4 acronym letter schools at your own place and how bad that is. That's an indictment on our friends over there at Auburn, and New Mexico State put up a great fight and they beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Can be mad at them for that.
Allowed fewer points than what Oklahoma's defense did.
That's true.
So
it's true.
There's something to this Nate Dreiling guy. I'm just going to say that. And I know y'all are going to accuse me of sitting here just trying to find the bright side and sunshine pumping everything. That's fine. But you cannot discount that. You got to look at that result and have to be somewhat intrigued. So, and again, if Brent Venables is looking at this dude to potentially be an assistant on his staff, whether as a linebackers coach or as the defensive coordinator or a co-defensive coordinator, along with Todd Bates and Jay Valai, then there's something to this guy. Brent Venables isn't just putting any guy on his staff as a defensive assistant.
100% agree. And it looks like base defense wise, they ran a 3.35 while he was there.
So, well, I don't know. It's going to be intriguing, man. It's going to be fascinating. I think they could go any number of directions. I think they want to probably have this figured out. So as they recruit linebackers, guys aren't having to guess, okay, who's going to be my position coach? But I think this is going to be, it's going to be fine. They're going to find a guy. Brent Venables knows defense. He knows what he's looking for. And even if you go get a 3.35 guy, a lot of times defensive coordinators, they want to have guys from various backgrounds because, hey, if Brent Venables is a multiple dude and he's got a guy that brings a 3.35 with him, then they can build off each other. They can, learn from one another and use that to benefit the defense and go from there. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, we're free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports and go check out his channel covering all of college football and the Oklahoma Sooners over at Unfair Sports. Check out my work over at SoonersWire.com. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, we'll continue to dig into this 2026 recruiting class, takeaways from the recruiting weekend that was, and we'll have more to come on Locked On Sooners. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer
Sooner.